Pride is a toxic, poisonous sin. And I learned it the hard way. In the year 2000, after the election, I came back to Washington. I was sitting at a desk in a temporary government office building, and my phone rang, and it was Karl Rove. And he said, Tim, I'm calling to change your life. President Bush would like to make you a special assistant to the president and a deputy director of the White House Office of Public Liaison. And I became a commissioned officer to the president for almost 8 years. And it was the professional ride of a lifetime. I love to read, I love to write, I love to speak. And when I was a young man growing up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, we had an afternoon newspaper, which is still there, called the News Sentinel. And one of the editors there contacted me. And he said, you know, I want you to write an occasional column. I don't want you to write about politics. You know, we've got a lot of politics on the page, but I want you to write about those other things. And by the way, and people always said, you're such a great writer. But pride does not accept being good enough. Pride does not say, that's very well done, that's good. Those are the gifts that God has given you. It says, you've got to be the absolute best there ever was. You have to say it better. You know, it's not enough to be the governor or the senator or the congressman. You know, everybody's got to be the president of the United States. I mean, this is the nature, and this is the toxicity, and ultimately, this is the hollowness of pride. One of my favorite writers is Mark Twain, and he once quipped that the difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between a fire and a firefly. And I've been in Washington long enough to know that pride often takes one of three avenues: sex, power, or money. And that was not my pride. My pride was the one who wanted to write it better than anybody, to express it better than anybody. You're always searching, and in my instance, was willing to find and to use other people's words if that would sort of fill the vacuum. And so incrementally, over time, knowing exactly what I was doing, I began to plagiarize some of those columns. And you know, I got wonderful feedback. One morning at the White House, I popped open my email, and there was an email from a reporter saying, "Did you plagiarize that column?" And I quite literally fell down next to my desk. And I prayed, oh God, because it was true. I'd like to be able to say that I had a well thought out strategy of what would happen if I got caught. But the fact of the matter is that I didn't. And I think that this is something that people who are arrogant and haughty have in common. That sometimes they're so caught up in it that it obscures their vision. And I have to tell you, as a Christian, I believe that reason and discernment are a gift. Pride obscures vision. And I picked myself up and I sent an email back. And I said, I am guilty as charged. And I did what I consider to be the hardest thing that I've ever done, which is that by the end of that workday, I wrote a letter of resignation to the President of the United States of America. And I literally cowered out of the White House because my entire world had collapsed. Losing a job is a very painful thing. In politics, there's a kind of divorce that takes place. When you embarrass a president or a governor or a senator, you become persona non grata. And I fully expected that's what my fate would be. It's certainly what I deserved. This all happened on a Friday. And I came in on a Monday to begin taking the pictures off the walls and, cleaning out my desk. And I received a call from the chief of staff to the president. He said, "The boss wants to see you." Now, I had been at the White House long enough to know that if it was good news, it was that the president wanted to spend a little time with you. But if it was bad news, it was the boss. And I went to the Oval Office, and I went to see the president. And when I got there, I noticed that there was no one else there except for the president and me, and I thought, boy, this is going to be really bad. And I looked him directly in the eyes, and I said, "Sir," and I began to attempt to apologize. And he looked at me, and he said, "You're forgiven." And I was so stunned that it struck me as a truly surreal moment, as if I really had not heard these words. And I tried to compose myself, and I attempted to apologize a second time. And he said, before I could get the words out, he said, "Grace and mercy are real." He said, "I've known grace and mercy in my life, and I'm extending grace and mercy to you. You're forgiven." And the third time I said, "Sir," I said, "I am so deeply apologetic. You have given to me the greatest professional honor of a lifetime. And I owe you a categorical apology. I'm sorry, please forgive me." He said, "I want to say a third time. You're forgiven. Grace and mercy are real." He said, "Now we can talk about all this, or we can talk about the last 8 years." He said, "I'll let you choose." And I barely had 1 foot out of the Oval Office, and the president said, "Oh, and by the way, I want you to bring your wife and children here next week so that I can tell them what a great husband and father you've been." It was a forgiveness and and for me, a pathway toward renewal and regeneration. And it was an extraordinary and a very painful chapter in my life.